Lauren Corbett, Editorial Director from Black Health Matters, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Monet Farr, who is founder of New Paradigms Grief Recovery and a life coach. And we're going to talk about loss. And I'm going to ask Monet to talk about what she does, because nobody can talk about what you do better than yourself. So, Monet, what is it that you do?
Thank you. Well, as you said, my name is Monet Farr, and I am a grief recovery specialist and I'm a life coach. And so I work primarily with women who are dealing with loss, whether it's from death of a loved one, divorce, and some of the other many losses that we suffer in life. And I help them to have some tools that they can use to process their grief. And then at the end of that, we then start working on, okay, so what does life look like now with your new set of circumstances? And how do you want to move forward? And so then I help them to actually move forward as well. And I love what I do.
So, a lot of times we talk about grief, but really, at the end of the day, today what we're going to talk about is loss, because I think we can all identify with loss,
Mhm.
whether we lost a job, we lost our way, right?
Mhm.
We've all lost our way at some point in our lives, right?
Yes.
So, um, and sometimes it's just coping with a loss, the finding the tools to even identify that we can find the words to say that that's loss,
Hmm.
right? How do we
Yeah.
begin to even say that? Like to even find the words to say that I'm in a space where I've lost something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think we don't understand the relationship between loss and grief. We have all experienced grief, whether you've experienced someone who died or not, because we grieve the things that we lose, and whether it's a relationship, whether it's a community, whether it's loss of faith. I mean, there's a lot of different things that our experiences feel like a loss. And so we've been grieving and we didn't know that we were grieving. And unfortunately, when people hear grief, they think immediately about death. But if we had an open mind around grief and actually had more tools and conversation around dealing with loss, everyday loss in our lives in a healthier way, I think we'd have those tools early on in life so that we don't get stuck when we find that after loss, after loss, after loss, and we haven't been really dealing with the grief of those losses, that's what gets us stuck.
Right. So you talked about being stuck. So
Mhm.
how do we identify that we're stuck?
Yeah. So a lot of times it's we lose verve for life, right? We just get a little complacent. We find that we're isolating. We don't enjoy the things that we used to, or there's very few things that we do that bring us any joy anymore. And so we're just going through, it feels like you're on a hamster wheel. And day after day after
Mhm.
day just looks the same, and you're not quite sure how to get it back. And so a lot of times because we don't have the tools, right? Or we don't have someone to say, look, you're stuck and you should get some help through this. We just remain complacent in that space. And it's, it's unfortunate because I think a lot of things happen when we're stuck. Our health starts to suffer, not only our physical health,
Mhm.
but our mental health as well. And, we're not interacting with other people. So our brain health, even, there's a lot of things, a lot of fallout from being stuck.
Now that's interesting. Now, so you said that a lot of things happen. So you're saying, so your mood changes, for example.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you become lethargic. Yeah.
Hmm.
You said something about your brain health. So how would that change, for example?
So when we're not interacting with other people because we're isolating, because we're just stuck and
Hmm.
not really putting ourselves out there anymore, then we're not being challenged to think outside of our own thoughts. And especially if we're just in this very small microcosm of people that we deal with, where it's incestuous, the thoughts become incestuous, right? Your thoughts and my thoughts are the same. So we're not learning more, we're not growing more, right? And so because we're stuck and we've decided that, even if we don't realize we're stuck, that we're okay with things as they are, we feel comfortable in that space,
Hmm.
and we don't even want now to try to learn more or to be with people who have different thoughts and feelings and ideas.
Right.
So it's a vicious
This,
cycle. You're stuck, so
right. Is it
you're
on?
comfortable being stuck, so you stay stuck. And so, unless you have someone, or, you start to at least read about or find someone like me who can, show you the ways in which we get stuck, and to compassionately help you through that, because it's hard. It's hard to first recognize that you're stuck and then to take the steps to make a change.
Right. Right. So, what made you want to do this work?
So, my own grief journey led me to become a grief recovery specialist. So, I lost my mom in 2010, and that was devastating. When you lose your
Hmm.
mom, it's like no matter what the
Yeah.
relationship, it's
Right.
like the earth beneath you just crumbles. And so, I felt that. And then I also suffered the loss of, like, basically the whole generation of her sisters and brothers.
Hmm.
But the thing that really just took me out was the loss of, my partner, my life partner. So when he died,
Hmm.
I just really didn't know what, my future looked like. And I didn't care. And so that was an indication that I needed some help. So that's when I found the grief recovery method, which is the method I use with my clients. And so the grief work is what got me started down this path, and working with my clients to give them the tools and help them through the process over a 6-week time period. But then I also realized that a lot of them were still stuck, even though they've done the work to now release the grief. They still weren't sure how to move forward. So even though you've
Hmm.
done that work, you could still get stuck. And then I've seen my friends and I felt stuck actually after grieving the loss of my soulmate. And I just felt like there was room for someone to be out here to help. And there are others like me, but I'm passionate about really helping people move forward into a life that they can love. Why just
Hmm.
settle for a life that's just okay and humdrum? Go for your dream life. Why shouldn't we all do that? And so I really wanted to empower women to move forward and go after what they really want.
And why do you think that your passion is for women, especially?
I see myself, I
Hmm.
do. And I think that as women, we're very, a lot of us are empathic. We feel so much and we do so
Right.
much. And we're the nurturers, we're the caretakers a lot of time. And not to disparage any men, because they have their roles as well. And they've suffered too. They really do. That's why I'd never say I'm not open to working with men. But the women are my passion to work with women through these issues, because a lot of times we just take the hit and keep going. We've been told, put your big girl panties on and keep it moving. You don't have time to sit down and feel sorry for yourself or feel bad or to feel the feels, right? You don't have time to
Right.
feel all those emotions. Keep going. And I think
Hmm.
that's a very dangerous message. And I just would like to be part of the solution to helping more of my sisters, live life fully and boldly and big and
Yes.
bad.
So, what I like is that we're having a conversation about loss and grief, but it's not this maudlin, sad um, um, overtone, right?
Mhm.
Because the perception is when you think about grief and you think about that we're going to have this conversation, that we're going to be like sad and somber,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? We're going to
Mhm.
be like, oh, So this is going to be this discussion, and we're going to be talking like this, and we're going to be really
Oh,
thoughtful, right?
yeah,
Like, well, we're not talking like that
no.
because what we're saying is that we're trying to recover our lives in
Hmm.
this conversation, that you're
Hmm.
encouraging women to find the joy again, to
Yes.
find purpose again,
Hmm.
and that it is possible to do that. But one of the things that you said that really stuck with me is that 6 weeks was not enough,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
there's no time limit, that you can't identify a time when the journey is over for
No,
someone.
no.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things I want to say about that. So, first is that those five stages of grief are not applying to grievers. That was, originally put out there by a psychiatrist
Mm-hmm.
who was working with terminally ill patients. So that whole concept of first you go through denial and then anger and then no, that's not. So our grief is not linear like that. And so everyone's journey is different. And so that's why the 6 weeks, even though my program is typically 6 weeks long, I've gone almost a year out, to be quite honest, with some people, because we all process our emotions differently. And so we have to be given the time to have our own unique grief journey. And we will have different emotions. You can have two siblings lose their mother and have completely different reactions to the death. So, and then my message is more upbeat because grief is every day. It's an everyday thing. I'm trying to bring normalcy to grief.
Mm-hmm.
It's not this big dark cloud that has to be so burdensome and, like you said, so dark and so gloomy that it feels very out there to us instead of it's something that we all go through, and especially in normalizing it for our children as well, so that then
Mm-hmm.
they grow up with a healthier experience and interaction with grief. And so that's where the name of my company really came from, was new paradigms, having just a new look at grief, looking at it differently, reframing our old vision of what grief is. I want to change that.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So,
Hmm.
you mentioned that there are so many ways that we experience loss. Can you talk about some of the ways that we experience it?
Yeah. So there are over 40 losses that we can experience through our lives and suffer grief as a result. So, death of a loved one is the obvious. Divorce is another one that we're familiar with. But what about moving? You move
Mm,
to a new location. That's a loss. You're looking forward to the new, place that you're going to be, but you're saying goodbye to friends and, the neighborhood that maybe you grew up in. So that's a loss. We
right.
have loss of friends. Sometimes our friendships come to an end, and that can be really devastating. And we don't compare
Absolutely.
losses. My loss of a friend might hit me harder than the loss of your dad because you didn't know him. It's like we don't compare losses. So they're all things that we may grieve. We also we grieve, in the losses that are intangible, right? Like loss of faith. When something happens and we don't understand it and we're questioning our faith, like, how could that be? That goes against everything I thought I knew about, my spiritual practice and my beliefs. So you got loss of faith, you have loss of safety. Things happen in our lives and we no longer feel safe, loss of health, loss of career. So there's so many things that we go through in life that make us grieve and we don't even recognize it. And so what happens is that grief gets packed on there and packed on and packed on. And then we got Samsonite luggage that we're
Hmm.
dragging around with
Right.
us from one relationship to another or from one stage of life to another. And we don't even realize it, but it impacts us.
Exactly. Exactly. And I have a friend who used to say one carry on allowed, but that's impossible if we're talking like this. If we're that's actually not feasible. If we're talking about all the things that we experience in life, how are we carrying one carry on? If we're actually living, if
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
actually
But we do want to
experiencing
we
life
want to
to its
pack light
full,
eventually. We do want to
eventually,
unpack
but
some of that luggage 'cause
right. so so we would
we
have to
do.
then face some of the things that we're experiencing and then take them and leave them behind
Absolutely.
somewhere.
Yeah. How many times do we start a new relationship and we haven't really dealt with the grief of the past relationship? We just said, oh, move on, get a new boyfriend, get a new girlfriend, just keep going, replace that loss with a new person. And you didn't really grieve what you had with that person. At one time, it was good, so there is some grief there, no matter why you broke
Mhm.
up. And if we don't deal with that, we just carry it into relationship after relationship. And then, it's hard for us to show up really healthy in those new relationships.
So when you're working with people, um, what is the process? Um, is it one-on-one sessions? Is it writing? Is it action? Do they get homework? Talk a little bit about how the work gets done.
So I have a couple of different programs. So the program
Hmm.
to really process the grief is the grief recovery method. And that's one-on-one coaching, but I also do groups for that as well. And
Hmm.
there is reading and there is homework involved in that process because it's important that we start have a new understanding of what grief is, right? And then we start getting new tools, new ways to look at things, new ways to process things. So it's really important. That homework piece is a crucial part of the work. And then we meet one-on-one weekly to talk about the assignments. And I give my
Hmm.
clients however long they need. Typically it takes them about 8 to 9 weeks instead of the 6 weeks because it's hard stuff that comes up. And
Hmm.
while I do keep it light, as light as I can, I am a compassionate specialist, and so I'm very aware of what they're going through because I've gone through it. So it
Right.
helps that I have experienced what they have. But then I also have the coaching after the grief recovery, and those can be different. So for your listeners, I'm offering that Heal Your Heart Challenge, where it's just the email inspiration and journal prompts just to get people started. But the bigger program would be another 4-week program where they actually get one-on-one coaching as well as homework assignments for the Heal Your Heart Challenge. And then the other coaching programs are a little bit longer. So I have another program that's 4 to 6 months, and that's really intensive. So we get into your beliefs. We talk about our values, right? How to structure your life based on your values, how to create boundaries based on your values. So we go a little bit deeper in those programs. So, but with everything, there is an educational component. There's always an educational component.
So just for those of you who are listening, Monet has given you a little tease here. She's going to offer you a 30-day program. Uh, Tell us a little bit more about that now, because we're just giving you a little, just teased it a little bit, but we're going to give you just this is a little quick little public service announcement.
Yes. So for your subscribers and listeners, I wanted to offer something special. So free of charge, they'll get a 30-day program where each of those days they'll receive an email in their inbox with some inspiration and also a journal prompt. And so what it's geared to, our brain works in a way that if we can get small tasks done and completed, it gives us a sense of confidence to allow us to do more work, and we see that we can be effective. So that's what this program is really about, is getting people to take these small steps towards healing their heart and towards moving forward in their lives. And so The inspiration is, just around giving them the encouragement to move forward and, with compassion and with good information. And then the journal prompts get them involved, right? So now they can start taking it in, self reflecting, and then writing it out. And that'll take them even further on this journey.
So you'll see the link um, right here. But then in the transcript, you'll also see the link again, and you'll see the link at the end of this program because we'll tell you again before we're done. But as you're listening, we just wanted to give you a little announcement. But we're going to keep talking, just in case.
Yes.
But this is a little public service announcement for those of you who are listening right in the middle of this show. um, so we talked about this, that all the kinds of losses that we can experience in our lives. But let's just talk a little. Let's go back to now that we just really talked about loss of a loved one, and because initially we didn't want to talk about that because a lot of times people shy away from that. But now we can talk about that, and that can change people's lives really significantly.
Yeah.
and and that's where many people become stuck and don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
Particularly women. And so let's talk about ways that how that shows up in our lives, and it doesn't, and this is not this could be women of all ages. This is not women of a
Oh,
certain
yeah.
age. This is women of all ages who just become lost. This is about being lost, not just lost. This is about loss, but become lost because they don't see themselves without the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's several things I'd really like to talk about here. And so one of them is around emotional incompleteness. So a lot of times when we have unresolved grief, it's because we didn't get to say something, do something. There were things that we thought wish were better, or we had more of, or even less of. And so because those things just get bottled in, because now we can't tell the person, even if in a divorce, it's not emotionally safe to have those conversations probably with your ex because you might just get re-injured. So regardless of whether it's death or divorce, those things are bottled up inside. And so because of that, we're just carrying that around and it's hard to move forward. But you have those friends that just keep replaying the same story. Every time you talk to them, they're telling you the same story. The same story, how, a lot of times it's in a breakup and he did this and he did that. And it's like, girl, we've been talking about the same thing, but it's hard to move forward. Even with death, you were supposed to take that trip and you never took that trip and, whatever it is. And so those things absolutely get us stuck. So that's one way we get stuck. The other thing is, you know, the people who are supporting us through grief mean the best. They have the best intentions. But unfortunately, there's so much misinformation around grief or no information around grief that sometimes we actually injure the griever with little things. So for example, I had friends loved me dearly. I know it for sure. And they would just call and say, "How are you? How are you? How are you?" And I'm like, I'm sad. I'm still sad. But after a while, I got tired of saying I was the sad one. I didn't want to be, negative Nancy all the time, even though I felt like saying he's still dead. So yeah, I'm sad. I'm sad. But I started lying and just started saying, yeah, I'm better. I'm better. And see, that gets us in the motion of not being emotionally honest anymore. And so,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not able to be emotionally honest, we're living a lie. And in living that lie, we get stuck.
Mm,
And it's such a, and it happens more times than it doesn't. Is That's what's so sad about it. And it's done out of like there's no bad wishes. People have the best intentions, but unfortunately, that's one of the ways that we can get stuck, and we just become more and more detached from ourselves, from our true self, because we can't be as sad as we really want to be. We can't be not okay with life still. Still a year later, yes, I'm still grieving. Yes. Even at work, we can't do it. People don't understand. So that's a big reason why we get stuck. And then the third thing I want to talk about is victimhood. So it's very natural to feel like a victim when we
mm,
suffer a loss. Yes, you didn't want this to happen to you or to your loved one. The problem is if we get stuck as victim, and it's easy to do because people expect you to be victim, then that's another way we get stuck, because we're not empowered now to move forward, to make changes, to make a difference. And so what I encourage my clients to do is, if you could take just 1% responsibility, not for what happened, but for your reaction, right, to what happened. That's the
mm.
only thing we can really have any control over, is how we react. So when the time is right, can you just take the 1%, and it could be as small as you got help. Hey, that's a move in the right direction. It's the smallest steps. But the more they do that, the more they will, and the less victim they'll feel, and the more empowered they feel. So that's a way out of getting stuck as well. But being victim is one of the ways we get stuck too.
But I want to go back to what you just said about the friend who calls and then you're like, I'm better. You can't say to your friend, you lying. You're not better.
See, the thing is that I know that when I've called my loved ones, right, and they're suffering, I am
Hmm.
waiting for them to say I'm better. I'm not putting the pressure on at all, but
Right.
in the back of my mind, I can't wait until she says, "Yes, I'm better." And the other person can feel it. And so, we want to make people comfortable with our grief.
Mm,
We don't want them to suffer with us, so we hide it. We hide.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
Mhm.
a catch 22.
Yeah.
So the grief, the person that's in grief has to carry the burden to make other people feel better.
Yes, absolutely. That's what
That's
happened.
jacked up though.
It is, and it is just about not having the right information, because you know what you can do instead of just saying, "How are you?" Do you need something? Can I just come and sit with you? You need some
Hmm.
grocery, what do you need? What I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to help, but I just want you to know I'm here. So if we had this information, then we
Right.
would know not to keep asking, "How are you?" But we don't have the information.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever say, how are you?
Hmm.
I don't think I say, how you doing? Because I don't think I say that.
How you
But
holding
yeah,
it?
no. I do say, what do you need? What can I
That's
bring
good.
you?
Yes. Yes. That's perfect. That is
what,
perfect.
what can I bring you? Need some food? That's how, what can I send? What can I bring? Yeah, I do say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
When
it's
can I
hard
come
as
by?
time goes on, you know,
Hmm.
6 months in, a year in,
Hmm.
I think it's harder.
And and I often say this to my family members. You don't want to be an expert on death.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Nobody wants to be an expert on death. And actually everyone's situation is different. So you don't want to assume that what you know to be true is true for that other person.
You're right. That is key. That is key because I lost my mom and someone else lost their mom. We had completely different relationships with our moms. So I don't know.
Right,
All I know is how
right,
I felt. I can share
exactly.
that with you, but I don't
Right.
know how you feel.
That's right. I do always say that to people. I'm like, I don't know how you feel. However,
Mhm.
I will say, my only advice to people is moment by moment. That's
Yeah.
my general advice.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
That's good.
Interesting. So, in terms of the, uh, as people are coming through the programs and establishing a kind of a new reality for themselves,
Mhm.
what what is your advice to them as they're doing it?
To have an accountability partner is really important,
Okay.
and to have a plan. So at the end of my programs, I definitely set up an action plan and we follow up. But it's so important to be able to keep the promises that we make to ourselves. Because if no one else knows about it, it's really easy to just go back to your old ways. Because
Hmm.
it's difficult to do something different. It is. So having an accountability partner is very important. Even if it's just a friend that you say, look, I promised myself I was going to do this. I'm going to go out once a week and just meet people. I'm just going to go into public places and try to just meet some new people, whatever it is. But just share that with them that these are the things that you're going to do so that someone can hold you accountable.
I think that's really important. So the person doesn't have to be, let's say, if you're doing groups, they don't have to be in that group. They could just be a friend or someone.
Yeah, an
Um,
accountability partner can be somebody, who it's whoever
okay.
they want to choose. They might choose someone in the group because they are going through very similar things, but
Right.
yeah, it could be just a friend, someone who really cares about you and would call you on it. But
Okay.
it's also having patience with themselves too. It's like, having that balance of compassion, but yet also courage, right? So we want to
Hmm.
have the courage to do the things that we say we're going to do, but also being compassionate with ourselves too. So just having a good balance.
And in your program, are there like steps? Like, so if I start in one program, could I go to a next program? Could I go to a next program? Because I feel like if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to come to terms with a loss of some sort, I
Hmm.
may need more and more tools and more help than
Hmm.
just one program, for example. So if there were more opportunities for help, it'd
Hmm.
be nice to know they're there.
Yeah. So I have a tier because I realize that, my clients are in different places. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually have a free Unstuck event. So it's a free
Mm-hmm.
webinar. And the next one is actually next Saturday at 12, June 15th. If anyone
Mm-hmm.
wants to tune in, but I have the free one. So that starts to get you, thinking about, wow, so that's what stuck looks like. I think I'm stuck. So
Right.
then we go into the Heal Your Heart Challenge. So the
Mm-hmm.
one I'm doing with your listeners is abbreviated to just the
Mm-hmm.
30 days, but I have a more extended program. But that's still
Okay.
another tiny step because that's a
Mm-hmm.
short program for just 4 weeks. And you start, getting the one-on-one coaching, you do some journal prompts and you have the lessons. So that's another step into the process. And then after that, then we have the Untangle program. And so that's the 4 to 6 month program. And that's more
Okay.
intensive. So that's when you're really feeling, okay, I really want to dive in and really make some changes in my life. And so then you would go there. But I did recognize that not everyone is ready to just go deep dive.
Right. Right.
Sometimes we need those baby steps.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm, mhm,
So, what advice would you give to people who are just um, want to dip a toe in?
So if they just want to dip a toe in, there's a couple of things they can do. I have conversations with everyone before I start working with them. And sometimes it's just a conversation to
Mm-hmm.
have someone talk to you that understands what you may be going through, to maybe give you some ideas of some of the things you could do, whether they're my programs or whether there's something else, then to at least get that going. The other thing I think is really good is the Unstuck event, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
free webinar on a Saturday. You're in your home. It's really easy. You just tune in for an hour, and then you
Mm-hmm.
see, it might give you some indication of where you are in your process, whether you need to maybe do some grief work, because you could do that too,
Mm-hmm.
or whether you're really ready to move forward. You
Right.
know. Hmm.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, is there
Hmm.
anything, excuse me, that you think we've missed in this discussion?
I don't think so. I think we did such a good job of covering everything. Thank you for being perfectly suited for this conversation. I really appreciate it. But I think we really covered a lot. I think, we covered the grief as well as moving forward. And it's important to distinguish, the two, and to be able to have, tools for each of those, because the tools are a little bit different, but they definitely help. And
And
the only other
and
thing,
for
I
people
guess,
that
maybe,
go ahead.
mhm. The only other thing we didn't really talk too much about was emotional honesty, and that's a big one for me too.
Oh,
So,
let's talk about that.
yeah,
Let's
being
talk about emotional
emotionally honest is so important. If you're not going to be honest with the people around you, at least be honest with yourself. And so, I have what I call a 5-step gut check. And so,
honesty.
it's every morning you wake up and you're like, okay, how am I feeling? Okay, so today I'm feeling afraid. Okay, so now the next step is, okay, why am I feeling that way? Why am I feeling afraid? Well, doing some new things. This is, scary to me to try new things. Okay, so then the next step is, so are there some beliefs attached to that? So, maybe I have some limiting beliefs around my ability to be different, you know? Then the next step would be, so is there anything I can do about it? Or no, first, is it true? Is it true? Is it true that
Mm-hmm.
I'm limited? No, it's not true. And then you want to ask yourself, is there anything you can do about it? And yes, I can, do more with my prayer and meditation. I can read and do things that, I can take these small steps that will show me that I'm making progress, and I can gain build my confidence. And then so those are the steps in that gut check. But I think it's just really important, and to be able to name the different emotions. Like, don't just always
Yes.
settle for I'm angry. Well, just really dig deep and figure out what it is you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then basically, is there something you can do about it? And
Right.
if not,
And you
it's about acceptance, right? Accepting that this is just what is, and having some
and you
peace
do that in the morning.
in the morning. Every morning, just check in, just get into the habit. It's a good habit
Mm-hmm.
to start really understanding our emotions, because our emotions are here to tell us something. They don't just simply exist, they're here to tell us something. And there's no bad emotions, they just are. So if we're jealous, envy, that's not bad, it just is. Now, what you do about it could be bad.
Right.
That's
Right.
where the good and bad could come in.
So for everyone listening today, this is something that we all can do, whether we have experienced loss or not. This is some a 5-step process that we all need to make a habit starting tomorrow. That is something we could take away right now.
Yes.
So let's do the 5-step gut check. Let's
Mm,
start making that a habit right now.
yes.
That um, that is a takeaway for us all right now. the other thing is that the 30-day challenge is something that we could all do ourselves, whether we've experienced loss or not. That is the
Mhm.
other thing that we could all do.
Yes.
So, Monet, please tell us again about the 30-day challenge that you're offering us.
So it's a 30-day Heal Your Heart challenge. And what we'll do is the link will take you to a page on my website where you can put your name and your email address. And so for 30 days after you subscribe, you'll get an email in your inbox with an inspirational message as well as a journal prompt to help you start reflecting and looking inward to decide how you can move through this that inspirational message and how you can apply it to yourself. And it just allows you to make these small steps forward to create a life you love.
All right. And who doesn't want a life that they love?
Yes, we all do.
Think about that. Who does not want a life that they love? So, Monet Farr, I cannot thank you enough for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.